I love your thoughts. What are ways to develop that trust and avoid the distrust based on the anatomy, that breakdown that you've just given us?
Okay, so let's say you're with a friend and you want to kind of take them out somewhere to eat. And you want to try somewhere new, you're going to try to find a source that you can rely on, where you have past experience, where you've had the outcome that you've wanted. So you can go to Yelp if you've had positive experience with Yelp, where you go to OpenTable and read reviews there, or Google reviews and go from there. Or you just pick a restaurant that you know that every single time you go, the food is decent enough reliably that you feel comfortable making that decision to go there. And kind of this idea of trust and confidence it's like finding the path of least resistance. So trying to kind of create this cognitive ease. And that's also paired with this internal sensation that you have in you. So if you have kind of this feeling with whatever the memory is, then you're going to associate kind of like danger or harm or badness with it.
It seems like that's one of the reasons why reviews for OpenTable, it's minimizing uncertainty by seeing what other people think. And I think it's also important to trust it, that you see the occasional negative review too, so you know that it's real and not sort of trumped up by the brand.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing with like Rotten Tomatoes, for example. There's all this media all around us all the time, and so we're looking for now sources that are reliable to tell us where to go, and then we can experiment on our own. So we look at these kind of review sites, or these kind of curated sites, or what we call influencers, or people who essentially serve as curators for us. And then the kind of the aspect of kind of the sensation that you tie, the physical sensation that you tie with the memory. How many people here have heard of the James Bond effect? So, you guys remember the Bond movies? Usually, kind of the love interest in the movie, that connection starts with him kind of taking them on this wild adventure, or we're going on this crazy kind of car chase where they're spinning around curves. Well, that feeling of kind of thrill that comes along with the feeling of adventure gets tied to the memory of James Bond. So from that point forward, James Bond is associated with thrill or adventure. And so I feel like ads actually should be priced not for the time of day, but actually the physical feeling that the person has who's actually looking at the ad. If you can only imagine how valuable it would be to have ad space just after an orgasm.
Well, and one of the things we've been doing is getting away from traditional advertising and moving into more immersive experiences, because you mentioned that all your senses are involved. So things like virtual reality, we're doing it more and more. So you've got sight, sound, and dimension, and you are immersed in this world, and they have been our most effective programs, and now it makes sense as to why.
Yeah, I mean, we learn best with multiple senses. So if you think of like right now, where you are right now in your chair, what you've eaten, what you're feeling, the smell of the room, the lighting, the sound, all of that kind of factors into your learning. The more senses you involve, the more of your brain you're actually involving in the process of remembering, the better the fidelity of the memory. You just have to make sure that the physical sensation that's tied with it is pretty good. And there's just other factors that these which kind of ties to this idea of synesthesias, where you have lots of senses that are tied together that don't necessarily seem like they should be tied together, but they are. So for example, someone can be wearing a loud tie, or you can eat sharp cheddar. These are words that don't necessarily fit with the same kind of sense, but we kind of intuitively feel it, and there's these non-arbitrary rules about how we perceive the world. So I can give you another example. So there's this thing called the Kiki and Booba experiment. So, I'm going to show you two alien life forms. This is one of them, and this is the other one. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, one of these is called Kiki, and which one is called Booba? What do you think this one's called? Kiki or Booba? Booba. This one is Kiki or Booba? Kiki. Right, so the majority of people, like 90-something% of people, will see this as Booba, and this is Kiki. Why is that? Well, no one really knows. Part of it might be that there's something to do with the sound, something to do with the sensations of kind of the sounds as they come through your mouth. Also really interesting is that people tend to think that Kiki actually is also clever and anxious. People think that Booba is lazy and slow. So these are sensory associations that we're tying to the world around us without ever really realizing it. And if in an ad or any kind of media that you're creating, if you're able to know what those associations likely are in the person who's going to see it, and you can predict that, the easier it is to take in the information, the easier it is to remember it, the higher the fidelity that goes into it. So if the information comes in nice and clear and clean, the more likely, it'll be remembered.